Welcome, everybody, to the, what's today, the 20th?
20th.
20th of May, 2026. What a beautiful day here in town, too. We have a quorum. There's 3 of us. We're going to settle down now, folks. Okay, we'll get rolling. Thanks. There's 3 of us here this evening, and that constitutes a quorum. We'll start with the approval of minutes. I don't recall reading minutes.
We did not get any minutes.
Okay, so duly noted. We'll delay that till next time. The first item on the agenda is item SP 260011 for Mills Road. It's a continued public hearing from the 1st of April. Mr. Gilliam.
All right, thank you, Board. For the record, my name is Warner Gilliam. I'm here from Walsh Engineering here on behalf of the Sullivan family. So as we discussed the last time that we met, so what we're bringing forward to you, the Sullivan Zone piece of property located off of Mills Road, and the project that's before you is a site plan review for a private road. Certainly their plan is to construct a private road here so that they can provide some property and land area for family members of theirs for the future. We went through, we submitted plans and comments to Acorn Engineering, which from what I understand, those stormwater comments are back under review with them. They had some comments. We did some plan adjustments based on their feedback and submitted that back to them, and that's currently under review. Staff provided us with comments as well, and I believe we went through those and provided comments and feedback to those as well. Certainly happy to go through the comments. If that would be helpful. But certainly what we're looking for, what our goal this evening is to have you declare the application complete and move us then forward to scheduling of a public hearing.
I'm not sure we need to go through, have you go through everything here. There are some items that maybe some of the other board and certainly myself have a few questions on.
Sure.
And I'd like to ask to go through the planning memo as well to see that the town code office is satisfied with the responses to date. Can we start just by saying where are we with respect to Acorn agreeing with the responses that I saw did go out from the applicant?
Yeah, we're still waiting for their review, so we have not heard from Acorn yet.
What's your estimate? You think this week?
I think within this week or next week, hopefully. I mean, the holidays,
So were we to find this complete, we could expect those before a public hearing?
I would think so.
Okay, all right. The last time on April 1st, we said there was a permit by rule to be filed. Did that occur?
So
or did you decide you didn't need one?
So no, we're in process, and we'll definitely have that permit by rule, filed and obtained certainly before any permits are required, for the construction. Yep.
So we might note that as a condition. Not yet.
Yep. Yeah, we likely may have, we may have 2, PBRs. Well, in the grand scheme, we'll likely have 3 component pieces that we'll be working with DEP on. So there's some recent changes regarding legislation surrounding significant vernal pools, and we've identified the one that's across the street, that's on the plan. We're working through with them just to get dialed in terms of what that what that process, that application looks like. It appears likely that that's a PBR, where we're on the other side of Route 9. We're just kind of catching the edge of that buffer piece. And then we have where our stormwater swales proceed down through the 75-foot setback to the larger wetland on the property. That also requires permit by rule, which that certainly is something that we're aware of, just because that's activity adjacent to that resource. And then, you know, the third piece will be, and this is something that gets filed once we've identified an operator for the site, and that's the main construction general permit.
Yeah, I saw it, and I'm hoping Nadia or Galen will speak to that as we go through the memo to see what the resolution, whether we're all on the same page with respect to that. That was the first time I'd seen that discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. On the first one, just to clarify, the first of the three-pronged PBR, are you saying that the law has changed and you expect to have to do something, or you are monitoring the situation and you may have to do something?
Correct, yes. No, so certainly, so, you know, the law has changed, you know, such that, you know, prior to, you know, the law was that when you had a significant vernal pool on your property, that that the buffer ended at the property line. And so it didn't extend across the property line. So, and I'll oversimplify it here. You know, just, the rule has now changed so that that's no longer the case. You know, so those buffers, you know, do extend now across the property line and can affect adjacent properties.
The vernal pool has a buffer, not
That's correct,
the
yes.
property.
That's right, yeah, the vernal pool has a buffer, correct, you know, that crosses over.
So that's real.
That's right, and so there was one, you know, identified a number of years ago, that's across the street over, as part of the Burles Way subdivision.
Right.
You know, and so that's located across. So what we've done is we've just identified the portion of that buffer that crosses, you know, that crosses Route 9 and that comes onto our property. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, and that location is picked up based on, you know, the state recognized coordinates, you know, for the location of that. And so we have, and I think we provided it in the memo, just, you know, an analysis of the land area that we control, and in terms of the percentage of that land area that we control that would be, you know, cleared, developed or cleared,
Yeah.
right? And so the understanding is that you're allowed to, you know, clear, disturb, develop 25% of that area, right? And so what we've shown is that, you know, the amount of this road entrance that we have here, you know, falls below that threshold.
What about the existing road? Does that get figured into that equation?
It's not property that we control. So,
Ah.
yeah, Route 9's not under, not under our ownership. It's a good question, though, because initially, I think when we were looking at it, it was, you know, there was this question of whether or not you look at the entire 4.5 acres, right, and assess,
Yeah.
you know, all of those component pieces that are within it and still have that 25%, but that's not how it's written. You're looking at the portion that is on your property and what you have control over, and it's 25% of that.
You don't get to claim advantage for undeveloped property on the other
Correct.
side
Well,
of it
and
either.
also on the flip side of it, you don't get penalized for,
Right.
you know, for overages,
Right.
you know, on a property that's across the street.
That's
So,
clear.
Yep.
Thank you. So you're all right with, from a findings point of view and from a conditions point of view, understanding that there's three components to that, and we'll be looking for compliance in all three?
Yes, yeah, we would just make sure there's a condition there, and certainly if the site plan changes, they're going to have to come back to the planning board as part of that approval process.
Yeah, that's nothing new though, right?
No.
No, okay,
No.
yeah.
But are we okay with Acorn kind of pending?
I think in terms of saying whether this is complete or not,
Oh,
Yeah.
good point.
you know, the actions all seem to be in play. If they don't come back in time for the public hearing, then we may have to continue it, right?
Got it.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're okay
I'm fine with that.
process-wise.
That's right. Yeah, the question is, you know, have we satisfied the board for us to be able to move forward to the next step?
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Got
in
it.
terms of the
Yep.
public hearing.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
good.
Okay.
And Warner, just to confirm, you're in agreement that if there is discrepancies with Acorn's report, that we will keep extending the public hearing process?
Sure, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. If Acorn comes back and there's additional comments, we work through that process. Yep,
Right, we'll do that when it happens, if it happens.
correct,
Yeah.
that's right. If they
Got it.
come back with additional comments, we'll take those into consideration and move that process.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on the sewer, public sewer versus not. And,
Sure.
The advice that we have from the town planner saying that's all well and good, you don't have to do that now, but if you ever want to get a growth permit there, you're gonna need to put in public sewer.
Sure, yeah, no, I understand, what the, what the question and the request was. I would specifically ask for that not to be a condition that's placed on this plan. One for a couple of reasons. One is that, any of our building envelopes that we have are beyond, they're beyond 200 feet of the public sewer. And so, statutorily, both at the state level and at the local level, we're really beyond the point of where, the town can, has that as a condition. But also too, I'm gonna talk about how it presumes a couple of things. One, it presumes, that there's capacity, so understanding the sewer component piece, and we've set aside an easement, we're certainly gonna pursue that and look at that in good faith, but it's a presumption, that there's, adequate technical capacity there within those lines, to serve that. And so that's one of the presumptions. The second presumption, and I think this is a common one, and I would say is generally an incorrect one, but it generally assumes that there's a failure, that there's failures of septic systems here. And I think that's also just a presumption, that now, are there systems that fail? Yes, there are systems that fail.
Sure.
Systems that we've seen fail, though, have typically been old systems, that hadn't gone through a design process. Systems that were improperly constructed, certainly systems that were improperly maintained, and things of that nature. So they all require a bit of human intervention, and responsibility. So, I think we're, again, it's I think a deeper conversation that the Sullivans and I need to have, in terms of, again, we're fully intending to look at that and look at the technical, component pieces, to look at the costs associated with that. But at this time, for this request for this private road, I would ask that not be a condition.
I think when I read this and thought about it, it seems to me, first of all, that the planning board, I don't see that we have the authority to dictate that at this point in time. I don't see that the ordinance supports us requiring that you connect to the public sewer. But I think, and I'd be happy to hear something more from planning on that, but at a minimum, what you're hearing is that the planning department in the town, which is influencing the ordinances and driving in the direction of that we're heading, is moving in a direction where by the time you go to apply for a growth permit to build a lot there, you may find a stipulation that says you're gonna be required to connect to the public sewer at that point, or you won't be given one. That's how I was reading the back and forth that I've been seeing, and I think that's just risk management at that point.
Sure, no, understood, and certainly if there's ordinances or performance standards that, that change, that's certainly something that, we have to keep track of, and we have to look at and address.
I haven't seen anything that says that the state, for example, is legislating that they can't put in a modern septic system this close to the wetlands. That would be something I would look for, you know, that, hey, no, we're not gonna be able to get you, you know, DEP approval at all, but
No, and we've had the site looked over. We have adequate soils on site, you know, in numerous locations. So that certainly was part of, you know, the original due diligence, you know, before this was even considered.
I think as part of the board's due diligence, we have to ask that question.
Sure.
And especially if, let's say, no one builds on this for 10 years, and they go back to look to see what were the conditions to put around this, we had to at least raise the discussion.
Good. Understood.
comment, thought on that? Just-
No.
I thought it was an interesting dialogue, and,
Yeah, so when town staff has given you this advice, it is related to section 24010.11. So that is where you can place conditions for site-specific concerns. And it does note specific sewage disposal and wastewater supply facilities as one of those conditions that you can
Right.
place. So there is a wetland of special significance that is on this property that does, you know, should be considered by the planning board in their evaluation, and with the location of the wastewater disposal sites. But that is totally your call. This is advice that you're getting from both the director of wastewater as well as the planning director.
to the point where you're saying that the director of wastewater would not allow a growth permit to be issued at this point.
He's recommending that they would have to install the sewer. That is their recommendation because of the close proximity to where there is sewer.
So
When you say
I'm
So
trying
the
to get,
jurisdiction of the sewer department is such that if you're within 200 feet, then ordinance
Then you have to
and
hook up.
statute dictates that you have to hook up.
I understand, this is coming at it from a whole different point of view. This is coming at it from a proximity to the wetlands, as opposed to proximity to the
Yeah.
existing sewer. What I'm getting at is this a personal preference, or is there an environmental, a substantive environmental concern that's been documented?
Again, I think you're hearing that as a recommendation that we are concerned about the impact to that wetland for private septic.
Why? Why?
Because of the close proximity of these septic systems to
Which
the
have
wetland.
not been shown to fail. Right,
They can and they do fail. And so you have to think long-term in the planning process that they do fail, and Maine DEP does require them to then connect to sewer later. And so we're trying to prevent previous mistakes that have been done throughout the town where these systems go in and they do fail. They do fail. Systems are engineered for the time period and they do fail. So we are looking long-term into what the potential impacts will be for the environment.
So is there some data on that?
I can certainly go and get you that data if you would like that. But I think,
I'm
Yeah.
trying to quantify this in some
Mhm.
fashion. We said, we're worried about this, okay. that's
Right,
great.
So-
like
so
what's
just
our role, I mean, as far as, you know, if hypothetically the system fails and perks into the, you know, the vernal pool or whatever it happens to be, what, I don't
Well,
know.
there's gonna be major expense in
Right.
mitigating that damage, and yes, some of it won't be recovered, and it's bad if it happens. I'm not aware of it happening, I guess is what I'm,
so in other towns that I've worked for, septics have failed on water resources, and it's on the town expense to fix that, not the individuals.
so if that's a legitimate concern,
I-
then we
I would
should as a
disagree. I
town.
would disagree with that.
Really?
That there are responsibilities at times whenever a property owner is shown that they're unable to afford those types of things, and there are mechanisms in place that allow for municipalities to work with the property owner to replace, a system should it fail, right? Generally speaking, though, I mean, septic systems are the responsibility of the individual property owner. It's not the responsibility of the town to go in and replace your septic system if it's, if it's lived its life and it's shown that it needs to be, replaced. Certainly, I mean, septic systems are a thing, a very common thing that happened throughout, the state.
If the data supports the concern such that we should be worried, both financially and environmentally, about putting in septic systems no closer than, you pick the number, to this resource, then I think we should be pursuing an ordinance change that says that you're not allowed to install a sewer system no closer than X to the resource, rather than saying to the planning board, if you think there might be a problem, you should tell them that they have to. I think that's leaving it up to the non-experts.
So one of the examples that
If the concern is legitimate.
right, one of the
why aren't we
examples that you
pursuing
have
an ordinance change?
is that you have within your ordinance, you do have a standard within your ordinance for designated shoreland zones, right?
Yes.
So where it starts with a setback of 150 feet, but then allows, the LPI to reduce that down to 100 feet upon, a showing of, that other considerations have been taken into account, for the placement of those systems, right? And so things that, that typically show up in those circumstances would be looking at some type of advanced treatment unit or something of that nature that, works to reduce, the strength of the wastewater before it gets to the field.
Are you considering putting in septic systems within the 250-foot?
So this is not a shoreland zoned wetland, right?
Right.
And so as such, we follow, the HHE 200 state standards,
Which is
for
how-
that.
Yeah,
So,
which is how close?
yeah. So in this case here, because we're a wetland of special significance, we're staying outside of that 75 feet.
75 feet. Okay. So that's what the state requires.
That's what we're staying outside of.
And where is that indicated on the plans?
So we don't have, we didn't identify our test pits, on this particular plan, so.
So how do you know you're gonna be outside the 75 foot?
Well, that can certainly be levied as a condition in that the state permitting is gonna require.
And certainly your local LPI, whenever those septic system designs are brought forward for a permit, can be addressed.
But that's a lot different than us saying, you can't put a septic system on any of these lots.
Correct, yes, that's right.
That's over here.
It's one thing to, to have a discussion about, advanced treatment, setbacks, things of that nature, right? As opposed to a mandate and a restriction such that no house, could be permitted on this site unless a private sewer main is run to it, which is certainly, well beyond the scope of what your ordinance requires.
Is it fair to say that a condition could be added to say that when a growth permit is applied for here, there will be special attention given to make sure that the location of the septic systems, that the preference is for connection to the public sewer, and if the septic is used, that there'll be special attention given to its proximity to the wetlands?
So, in fairness to, to staff, to future staff that's good, would be looking at a plan like that, I think you want to make sure that you give, good direction, right?
Of course.
So.
I'm trying.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because sometimes, special attention, well, what does that mean, right? That's gonna mean different things, certainly different things to
No
different
doubt.
people. And certainly I think we're willing to, to maybe come back once we're in the public hearing process, and we can talk about, what conditions that we may offer, towards that.
Where is it, it sounds from what's being described that septic systems for an unnamed number of lots is feasible. That there's probably places where you have test pits and they're far enough away that they would be feasible.
Correct.
Is there a similar way of going through that says, running a sewer line out to these potential lots is also feasible? Is that technically possible? I don't know the grade, does it go
Yeah.
along the road, where would it be?
Yeah, no, it's certainly, I mean, from a, from a technical capacity, situation, I mean, yes, we can certainly, we can install a force main, on the property. That's,
I thought you even
that's,
reserved the right of way for.
we do, we have
the
a
ability to
reserved,
do that.
that's right.
But just
Yep.
because you have a right-of-way doesn't mean that you can get a sewer line
Fair
through there.
point. Yeah.
So,
Well,
here's
it-
my concern,
Yep,
is
Sewer
we
easement.
approve this, and in the future, you go down and say, well, they approved it, but there's no way to deal with the effluent. We can't run a sewer line in there, and there's no place to put a septic, so we've got a road to nowhere. I wanna avoid that.
But that's on him,
Yeah, he-
It is.
right? I mean, that's not
ev-
our
every-
issue.
Everyone wants to avoid that.
But-
There's no one who's an advocate of that.
I know, but I mean, I'm thinking, aren't we, road or, road or no road? I mean, if you decide to put one house or 10 houses, we're gonna see it again, right? Or is the
Not if
concern?
it's
So-
family.
it's subject,
Not necessarily.
so the
Okay.
septic system,
The code office will see it.
Right, okay.
So I'll give you an example, right? If we pursue septic systems, right?
Yeah.
Certainly it is incumbent then on, the property owner to provide, the LPI, with a septic system design that has the proper data, that meets the state standards. That is certainly, that is a risk that, that every property owner takes.
LPI?
Licensed plumbing inspector. Yeah. And again, certainly we wouldn't be here if we didn't have, if we hadn't pursued and obtained a number of test pits on the site showing that there were adequate soils.
So you don't have to make any decision tonight.
Yeah.
Because we are going to a
Application.
public hearing eventually, and that's when you would make those decisions on waivers and conditions.
Absolutely. I just wanted to have the discussion.
Yep.
I think this is, if there's a reason for having a planning board, to me, the back and forth here and then the public hearing is the reason. That's what,
And did I hear 200 feet?
Correct.
Is that what we heard? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, I might be crazy, but I would think that's a slam dunk. I mean, there's so many concerns about the pools and the environment that, I mean, you could have been 700 feet, and the cost, I don't know,
I'm not
So,
following.
so the requirement is if you're within 200 feet of a town sewer main.
I'm sorry.
then
I
there's
thought
a-
you were
Then
saying-
there's a requirement,
To hook up.
that you hook up.
All right,
It's like, I already paid for this infrastructure, you have to use it.
got it.
No, that's not what's going on here.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, the opposite is true. Here's an opportunity, perhaps, to extend the infrastructure
Yep.
to a future growth area, and
Well, it seemed like
You
the
know, the-
recommendation, just go right up Burl's Way, and we'll just
Yeah.
connect right in.
that's right.
Yeah.
And the monies for that will come out of this development,
Right.
okay?
And
So
families
that's,
like,
we're
wait a
talking
minute.
money
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
um,
Got it.
And
Understood.
opportunity.
Okay.
There are a couple of other things as well. We've got any response from the fire chief yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, and we also, there's a question about slopes, and I'm not gonna pretend to understand the 3-to-1, the 2-to-1, and how that gets marked and if it's been addressed or not.
Yeah, certainly, there was some comment, in terms of, what we have, how we have the stabilization identified, on our drainage slopes. I mean, I'm happy to change the language, but we've identified that, that those slopes get stabilized with, an erosion control matting. I mean, I'm happy to change the term to soft armoring if that's helpful on the
I thought the issue
cross-section.
was, no one could see on the plan where there was 3-to-1. You came back and said, yeah, that's because there's nowhere on the plan.
Well, we have
It's 3-to-1, but
we have
in
a
the event
number-
that there is,
Right.
this
We
is how
have a
we deal
number
with
of
it.
locations, I think, where we've identified where the slopes are and which direction that they point to. So that's identified on the
So you think
plan.
there may be some areas that
Are steeper than that,
are
yes.
steeper than that? Okay, all right, I misunderstood that.
Are we at a point where we have enough information? There's a few items that are up in the air. Do we have enough information where we can say this is complete and move on to a public hearing?
I'd like to ask that either Nadia or Galen go through the the memo and advise us on that, but I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Yeah, outside of those two, there was just a technical, we did notice that there was the signed acknowledgement from John and Joanne, but I didn't see one for William and Linda. Are they all still the owners for the
Yes.
property?
Yeah, yeah, they're here, we just haven't gotten it yet, but you'll definitely get a copy of
So
that
that's
as
just more of
well.
a technical
Yep.
paper issue. Again, the fire chief, we're gonna talk to him. We're still in the transition of a new fire chief, so, when we get comments, we'll let, WEA know about them.
But what I read was that the plan has been updated to include a turnaround.
Yes, he did provide the
Yes.
schematics.
We
Well,
believe will be acceptable.
The road design was already done per the town standards, but what we provided.
Including a turnaround.
Correct, right. So what we provided was just the diagram showing, essentially the path that a fire truck would take. So, it's literally, it's the path of the tires, along the traveled way, in a diagram form that's shown. So it's a model, and I mean, it's how you determine whether or not you're gonna have any conflicts, with the fire apparatus or not, so, and that was provided.
Okay.
Brandon, remind me quickly, what's the length of the road?
About 1,100 feet.
Okay. So that fire chief has to comment on that, that's past the 1,000 feet.
Which is not a standard
It's not a standard for,
yes.
for a site plan. It's only subdivision.
Subdivision, right. Okay, thanks.
All right, with that then, can we make a motion?
Yeah, I motion that the application is complete.
I would
I'll second.
Oh, all those in favor?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Werner.
Thank you very much,
Clarity
board.
and patience,
thank you for all
appreciate
You
it.
bet. See you soon.
So that's
Only-
June 3rd for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
I can't think of another instance where we've had this dilemma.
Of septic?
Versus,
No, this is new.
you have to run a sewer line. All right. You learn new things every day, pay attention. Which reminds me, there are openings on the planning board, any citizen are welcome to join. I'm living proof you don't have to know anything.
Oh, yeah.
That's a new criteria we're adding.
Knowing something.
You have to know something.
Oh, good.
We're gonna move on
It
to,
really is fun.
the next item
You
on
learn things.
the agenda, which is, SP 260014 for Goat Island, Kennebunkport Conservation Trust. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Forrester with Flycatcher here on behalf of the applicant, the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust. They are the owners of Goat Island and historically have had a dock system out there to provide access for both, the caretakers, for sightseers, day trippers, anyone interested in visiting the island. That old system was composed of 4-inch steel pipes that were driven into the ground to attach the seasonal floats to. Those floats were 6 feet wide and 20 feet long, and they were just set up in a string of 160 feet, so 8 of them. And then they had a small access ramp at the beginning that was simply held in place with helix tankers. So essentially the whole thing can pop in and pop out. Over time, the steel pipes have failed. I think at least 1 or 2 are missing. A couple of them were bent over. They just exceeded their life expectancy. So we're essentially looking to replace that access with a new design that is a little more robust. The main difference is how they're held in place and also the width of the floats. So instead of being 6 feet wide, we'd like them to be 10 feet wide. That extra 4 feet provides a tremendous amount of stability. If there's any kind of tide or wave action, it's like walking on a roller coaster out there. And again, the whole thing would be seasonal. The other difference.
And is that for the floats or the dock?
Yeah, the whole.
Microphone, I'm sorry. The width I meant, the moving from 6 to 10 feet.
Yeah, the width of 10 feet wide is here, on these sections.
Yes.
And then these are narrower sections that are closer to land and
Right, but the narrower sections that are closer to land, are those seasonal or are those permanent?
they are seasonal.
They're
Every-
seasonal as well.
the-
Okay, the whole thing is seasonal.
This entire structure is seasonal,
Okay.
with the exception being the anchoring to the floats themselves. So instead of having a series of single steel pipes driven in, we're gonna use they call them dolphins, so it's a triple pile. You have one plumb that's vertical and then two back batters, so they're, like a pyramidal brace. And then the plumb one has a rub rail on it, so the floats can sit right up against it and ride up and down. So it's tremendously more stable. So, and again, the dolphins will remain in place in the winter. They are a permanent structure. They're set on helical anchors. And then all the floats can come out at the end of the year.
And you're not changing anything on the approach, other than the width?
Correct. It goes right back in the same spot as the other one.
The current one is equally long?
Correct.
And this length will be the same, 160 feet?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the same
And the
question?
access will remain the same, so anybody comes along, they're free to just tie up?
That's correct. Yep.
Great.
They do flat out at low tide,
Yeah.
so, yep, they are.
What's the increase in surface area of this over the ones you've been using?
Sorry?
What's the increase of surface area on this over the ones you've been using? You're getting a 4 foot wider times, what, 100 feet, another 400 square feet, something like
100,
that?
160 feet, so 160 by 4.
160 feet times 4, so
Yeah,
160 is the entire length.
that's 5,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
Of the
But-
floats, that's over
But you're not,
500 more square feet.
you're not
Yeah.
10 foot wide at the narrow part of it.
correct.
But still wider, so you're adding close to 600 square feet, adding close to 600
Yes.
square feet.
Yep.
640.
No,
640.
Thank you very much, math majors.
you're not going anywhere, you're too good.
So the substrates within that area, they're all, it's intertidal bottom. There's no eelgrass, there's no salt marsh, so it's all either sand, mud, or a gravelly cobble substrate. So,
As you say, it's bottoming out twice a day, so.
yep, and all the floats are designed with skids, so they are elevated off the bottom when they do bottom out. So
Will they have more skids?
regardless of the width,
Will
actually.
they have more skids than what they have right now?
Nope, the same number of skids, they'll just be spread out a little bit further.
Okay. Yeah, understand my concern is it's a non-conforming dock, couldn't build that dock today,
Mhm.
6 foot by whichever, and we're gonna make it larger.
How is it how is it?
Isn't the standard 4 feet?
The dock is
This-
non-conforming. It is, I believe it is too large, and it's in the velocity zone, which is also, docks are not allowed to be constructed in the velocity zone, so it's non-conforming.
And can't
that
be over
front.
100 feet. If this were a new dock, we wouldn't even make it this far.
So these are the floats, not the pier. So in your ordinance, your permanent pier structures are limited to 4 feet in width, not the
Okay,
float.
and these are on a string, so that makes them different?
They're not permanent structures.
Okay, there's no support out there for those larger floats
Just the
anchoring to
dolphins
each other?
that hold them together. And then there's D-rings that connect each float to one another with cotter pins.
I've been out there for a while. Those steel pipes currently go out the 160-foot length.
They do.
Okay.
So it is essentially replacing the structure, and
It is and it isn't. We're going from 1 hole in the ground to 3 holes in the ground, times each dolphin that goes in there. We're increasing the square footage
Mhm.
of almost double. Because we're going from, I don't know what the width is on the approach, but we're going from, and I like Goat Island, and I like the approach, and I like the floats, but we're going from 6 feet to 10 feet, which makes more sense. But any other circumstance, there'd be no way we could approve that. We'd be fighting to get smaller dockage rather than rebuilding the same. This wasn't destroyed in a storm or anything.
the floats were not in place during the storm.
They would've been.
The steel piles took a beating.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, but that we're now just replacing them, we're upgrading them to something that's different. There was a dock not just across the fetch there where it was rebuilt, and they were able to rebuild to a 6-foot because they were grandfathered in and was destroyed in the storm, although this board pushed for a 4-foot. I'm raising these questions, and I need to go back and have discussion about the ordinances. I don't know what the planning office has thought about this.
Yeah. I guess the one distinction there, though, is it's the permanent pier structure that's limited to 4 feet in width, not the width of the float.
When we've determined the length of a dock, we've added in the floats that are floating at the end of that dock, seasonal
length.
or
Right,
whatever.
but
For the
we're
length.
talking apples and oranges, I feel like, because a pier width is limited to 4 feet in width, but a float is not. I mean, if you had a 4-foot wide float, it wouldn't work.
You always see them put a big one on the end. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Point taken.
So, recap, the length is longer than you would build today, as
Yes.
George is saying, but it's no longer
Yes.
than it is today.
Correct.
Okay. The floats are wider than the floats you've been using, but that's not legislated. Okay.
A quick
Just for
clarification.
stability.
The
yeah.
floats are legislated and are included in,
And the width,
the total area of the floats the floats in general are not permitted in the velocity zone, and so any expansion of those floats in the velocity zone is an expansion of a non-conforming
You
use.
you can't build a new dock in a velocity zone.
Or expand a non-conforming
Non-conforming
use,
structure.
which is, this is currently is non-conforming because it
Mhm.
is in the velocity zone. So it can't be expanded.
I think that's right.
I'd have to go back and look at the ordinance.
We've had rebuilds in velocity zones, but they were rebuilds.
Yes, it can, as
Correct.
long as it's in the same footprint, the same size, they can rebuild to the existing size, but it can't be expanded.
Why are we concerned about the size, the width of the float in a velocity zone, from a physics point of view?
Well, from a physics point of view, the bigger, heavier a structure is, the more stable it is. When waves roll through, you know, a small float will just go like this, just like a bigger boat is more stable than a smaller boat in a
Okay.
more turbid environment, in a storm surge.
So from that argument, you would argue that
For me, it's a safety
the
factor.
bigger floats are better, and why would we have an ordinance that would tell you don't have it any bigger than?
I think the intent of the ordinance is that you're trying to limit float sizes so that perhaps in a neighborhood, in a community, people aren't putting out huge amounts of floats and, you know, encroaching in on waterways, encroaching in on their property owners. Personally, where I live, we have a 10 by 20 foot float, and it services 22 people that have their boats out on moorings.
Yeah.
And everybody gets along just fine. This is a slightly different circumstance, being out on an island, and providing access for, you know, for everybody.
But say something about the concern vis-à-vis the velocity zone. That's saying there's more tidal action there, there's more storm vulnerability there?
Yep.
There's wave action.
And
Wave action.
And the other factor to this too, though, is that those structures are seasonal, so they come out. And in
Right,
fact,
right,
if there is the potential of a mid-season storm
you're gonna
surge,
pull them,
they're gonna pull the floats, yeah.
right. There's not a neighboring property that we're worried about here.
Right.
I'm just, I mean, yes, we have to go look at the ordinance, but from a practical point of view, what's the concern?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it seems like the driver of you coming is you want to improve the situation.
Yeah, we wanna make them more stable and
More
more
s-
safe.
Correct.
More stable and useful.
Yeah,
That's-
they're not
that-
very stable.
That's it.
It's pretty
Right,
rocky.
right. It's
Yeah.
not like you're trying to get more traffic out
Right.
there or bring in more people or
Right.
like ferries or cruise boats. It's
If
just-
anybody walks on the finger floats on
So-
any of the mooring, any of the
Yeah.
marinas in town, I mean, the little finger floats are the ones that rock all over the place.
Right, so we're used to worrying about impervious surfaces on the land and not expanding a situation where we're already over the limit of impervious surface on a lot. that's different than what we're looking at here. And I'm questioning what exactly in the ordinance would preclude us from allowing a larger, more stable float size, seasonal float, in this situation, because it's in a velocity zone. Why would we worry about that?
Is the velocity zone state or town ordinance?
So interestingly enough, it is a local provision. I don't see that in chapter 1000, that there's a prohibition on velocities, and it's something that the town has decided in their, as a policy matter, that they are trying to phase out new docks, and, you know, existing ones that, you know,
Therefore
eventually.
expansion.
And what leeway do we have? And here's why I'm asking it.
Right.
Those velocity zones are primarily along little creeks and inlets and traffic, and, for instance, two of the rebuilds we had, like, you could never build a dock there. This is different. There are no neighbors. It's not a creek. It's not an inlet. It's openly exposed.
It's
Do we have leeway?
it's a community resource
It's a
that
community
we're looking
resource.
at making safer.
And
Right.
if you've
So
ever
what
been
is
out.
it, I'm looking for some way to say that the ordinance can't possibly be precluding us from doing that, can it?
So, you know, we can certainly, you know,
It's gonna
if
push
the
it.
planning board would like, we can ask our town solicitor to give an opinion on this.
That's,
It is, in staff's determination, it is a non-conforming use, and we're trying not to expand that use. And it's, you know, also imperative to make sure that, you know, yes, this is the case and example here, but now you're getting another applications in a different location where, you
And
know,
someone says, look what you did.
yeah.
Why,
So,
why not me?
we do want to make sure we're applying.
I can appreciate it.
I don't disagree with staff's opinion. I guess the 2 points that I would just like to emphasize is, one, it's being done for safety reasons. There are no abutters to this. It's an isolated island. And the third one is, typically, these docks are put in place, or typically it's a residential dock, and that's where those limitations fall. You're trying to keep someone who perhaps could afford to build a, you know, ginormous float out there. But this isn't really the case. This is.
you want to argue, at least present to the solicitor, if that's the way we're going here, with the thought that this is not an expansion of use because of the isolated nature of it. It's not impacting anyone else. It's only the existing use made safer.
And then the last piece of that just might be that the expansion it's not going any further into the resource than currently exists. It's just 2 feet wider on each side
It's a
for
little more
stability.
surface area, but that's not a
Right.
germane part of the consideration
Right.
here. If you'd be willing to do that, Galen,
We can ask
David, you
for,
got a thought on this?
I
know
would
you've
just,
been to the
no,
piers.
we've been out there, the select board
Yeah.
went out there, and this was not brought up then.
Yeah.
So the select board did kind of give the okay after seeing it. So, I mean, to me, this is a safety issue. I mean, it's an island out in an area that can be wavy, and why would we want to do it that it's not safer for people to be out there
Right.
to, when you're
And some
replacing
people
it?
kayak
This is
out there.
generally a safety issue. It's not
Right.
in the
Unless we
river
could-
or the harbor or Cape Porpoise,
We're
you know,
not,
down
we're not hurting the environment
you're
by
not,
making it.
you're not impugning other neighbors.
Yeah,
ability.
on
So, I
anyone
mean,
else's rights. yeah.
That's how I'm looking at it. This is purely a safety issue for this island and the people who use it. So I don't know if we really need to spend legal money, which we don't have,
Okay,
to ask
Yeah,
a question,
We'll do
which I
that.
think if it's
I'm
not, if it's
asking
some,
for that.
no, I'm just saying,
looking
I'm
for the
saying,
wherewithal to
I'm
say
now saying
this-
this is like,
I
I don't,
don't consider this an expansion of use, and I don't wanna,
so, that's just
I
my.
can't go against what the planning office is
well, you
gonna
can.
permit. No,
They just won't permit it.
yeah, that's right.
The,
They have the hammer.
a couple of questions, and they come out of completely left field. I know it's owned by the Conservation Trust. Does the Coast Guard have any jurisdiction over that lighthouse?
I mean, it's sort of, it doesn't pertain to the application before you, so I don't know the answer to the
Okay.
question. I
Maybe
believe
they need a
that,
bigger dock.
I
don't
believe
know.
that the lighthouses have all they've been decommissioned and given
decommissioned and turned
given
over.
to those
I think
people,
so,
but they
too.
still maintain and run them.
Okay,
They still serve a purpose.
they do.
Yeah.
And as does the dock, and it is a community resource. I don't even want to say this out loud, the area of it could be decreased if it were shorter.
But because it's
Yeah,
tidal,
it could be,
it probably.
yeah,
I'm just saying that out loud.
yeah. It, you could do that. I think the question really is just whether or not the intent here is that that change is significant enough. You know, again, as we stressed, it is safety driven.
Made it shorter and went to 8 feet.
Well, the other thing I'm hearing here is
Well.
that this is not a state
No,
ordinance. This is the town, and if in fact the code office is saying that our ordinance is precluding the planning board from okaying this, I think this is something that needs to go to the, what's the Board
Growth
of
planning.
Appeals?
Well,
Appeals Board?
I didn't mean to monkey wrench this. It's just that.
There's
No, it's
area.
legitimate.
We,
No, but
we
it's-
have docks that come before us.
Yep.
And we have to fight tooth and nail because there was one, the only time in all the time I've been on the planning board, we ever denied an application was on a dock. And they just couldn't get it under 100 feet. They got a different engineer and eventually got it to 99.6. And so we had to approve it. But it was hard fought. And there was special dispensation because someone had come in past the limitation to replace a dock in the storm,
Yeah.
but there was this other thing that where you could, and so they were able to replace those docks.
Right.
Someone else could come along a couple of years from now and say, oh, well, you let them do this out on Goat Island.
Understood.
How come
yeah.
you're not applying the ordinances?
Okay, so
Even.
here.
But if
we-
you
we
look,
just said
but
the land-
one thing that's important to note,
I'm sorry.
if you look at, and I am, Google Earth, the satellite image of Goat Island,
Okay.
and you look at the existing dock, it's not a coincidence that it is as long as it is. There's ledge and a sandbar on both sides, and it goes out right to the end of that. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
it's
I
not
think that it
it's not
was
arbitrary.
designed, what?
It's not arbitrary.
Correct,
Yeah,
it was
I gotcha.
designed specifically to get past that.
But,
Been there a
but,
long time.
but we're not arguing, we're talking about it, but we're not arguing about the length. We've all agreed
Okay,
that the length
yeah.
is grandfathered. What we're worried about is that this may be considered, someone may consider this an expansion of use because it's wider.
Well,
And it's built in a velocity zone. Okay, I don't think it's an expansion of use, but there is a concern that's been raised.
I would say that, okay, if someone comes along and they're also the land trust or conservation, then I don't know, I think it's a very unique situation because of, you know, I mean, to me, it's a safety issue and they're improving it.
I agree.
Yeah. Nadia, what do you think?
I believe my comment made our staff opinion clear in the memo.
I haven't seen the memo.
It's been on the SharePoint since the end of April.
Yeah. I'm just telling you, I haven't seen it, that's all. Could you maybe read that section of it for us, or? you gonna
Sure.
bring it up?
So this is my comment. We didn't receive the original plan and existing conditions plan, so this was more of a hypothetical comment. You've confirmed that the
Okay.
existing dock is smaller than, or the existing floats are smaller than the proposed floats. So we said an existing conditions plan was not provided showing the current dock and float layout. The applicant should submit information about the size and placement of the current dock and floats so staff can confirm compliance with 240-8.8, which is non-conforming uses. This says expansions of non-conforming uses are prohibited except that non-conforming residential uses may, after obtaining a permit from the planning board, be expanded within existing residential structures or within expansion of such structures in shoreland zones. So our reading of that is that expansions of non-conforming uses are prohibited. I would call this a literal expansion of,
It's not a residence.
it's not a residence, but the
Yeah.
residence is the accept part of the
You're
expansion.
saying that you've made the decision that this dock is a use. right?
I believe we went over this when we had the two dock applications before us, maybe last year.
Yeah,
I think that we went kind of around and around about whether is it a
We did.
structure, is it a use?
we did.
I believe the answer is it's both.
Okay.
So,
So, Nadi, one thing that was just brought to my attention, this is actually a contract zone. So, in the language of that zone, it talks specifically about the dock being there and its existing. So I would say this is not non-conforming because it's part of the contract zone.
It's still
For
in the
that area.
velocity zone.
Right, but it's in the zone and it's in the language in the ordinance.
So the language says you can expand the footprint.
It doesn't say the language. You locked out. No, the language does not say that you can expand the footprint. But the dock itself is permitted in that size under the contract zone, is just the point I was trying to make.
I don't think we're arguing that the length is.
Yeah. I now understand why the existing conditions was necessary, and the only reason why we didn't submit it was because there's nothing there anymore. So,
So I just want, so I understand this, the issue here is simply the width of these
Yeah.
floats.
yep.
From the
Right.
It's how many?
The ordinance
What
reads
what
for.
is the current,
The current,
the current floats are how big?
they're 6 feet wide.
6, and you
Yeah.
wanna go to 10?
We want to go to 10, yep. And the current ordinance says you're allowed basically a 10 by 20-foot float. You're allowed 200 square feet of float for residential use. And that's kind of where I feel like this contract zone, specifically to the island, puts us in a slightly different category. It's not really residential.
No.
So
No
that's,
one's arguing that it is.
so that's where I guess we're looking for the consideration of the board to consider that under a slightly different lens.
Right, and you're appealing to the board, and the board is telling you that the code office is insisting that this is an expansion of use. And I'm concerned about that, and I said, yes, if that has to go to legal, then I think it should, and our selectman is
Well-
saying, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing that, so we're going around on it about 3
Well,
times.
I'm coming at this from the standpoint that this town is $55,000 over on its
I
legal budget.
understand,
I would-
no,
I
I
can-
couldn't agree more.
I can use main municipal services, which are free for the town, to get an opinion.
All right, that's fine. I can also ask, why wasn't this brought before the select board when this came up at the last meeting?
Because we did not have what the existing conditions were versus proposed.
Okay.
So is the concern that we're gonna set a precedence here? I mean, cause I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a great, let's do it.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
I don't wanna say that and then have like some other folks have raised that, like 5 people in town, and hey, look what you did over here, I
That's right.
want.
That's right.
So is that the concern? Can we fence it so that when it's written out, that it's very specific, that it's, do you know what I mean?
How would you explain that this is not, in fact, an expansion of use because of its unique situation on the island as a non-residential area?
I think that we've agreed to reach out to MMA Legal. I think that it's
Okay.
possible that we are a little bit outside of the expertise of anyone on the board or
No question
on
about
town
that.
staff at this point. So I think, we can wait for the MMA perspective, and we can certainly forward that over to the board to help in any decision.
That would be much appreciated.
Still have 20 other questions, but I'll be quiet.
No, I think it's.
How
time-
long do you
it's
think
time
this
for
would
that.
take? Let's say that hypothetically, you were gonna do this.
To install the 3 dolphin vents can be done low tide, probably 1 a day.
Oh, okay, so
And then the floats are just built off-site,
okay.
so they can be constructed whenever.
It's loaded in.
Their hope was to get it in, is to get it in this year.
Okay.
What zone is this in?
It's a contract zone.
What is a contract zone exactly?
It's its own
It
zone.
is its own zone that the town established because it's such a unique area of
Are
town.
there any other contract zones?
That's the only one I'm aware of.
Only contract zone.
Is Goat Island.
People have tried to explore other contract zones in town.
And is this tied at all to the kayak initiative?
No.
No.
No,
No.
okay, because I saw that there was some mention about going out to Goat Island and things like that, but, okay. So
They- they
regardless
may-
of
they may
this
use it, but
dock,
it's no
old dock, you
relationship.
guys will still, yeah,
If it's 6 feet, 10 feet, 2 feet, you're still going out.
yeah,
Uh,
okay.
I will forward the contract zone language over to the board as well, so that you can review what the specific language in the contract zone.
It's in 240 though, right? It's that,
It's an attachment to a section in 240, so it's kind of difficult to
If there
find. So
were-
I'll forward a copy.
If there
over.
were a change to what might be allowed in a particular location, would that go to the zoning board of appeals? Where does that end up, or is that a select board matter?
So it's not really a variance because it's not a setback issue, and it's not lot coverage because it's over the water, so that's,
There was a dock that went before the select board because it was a commercial application.
so all
Yes.
docks and wharfs go through wharf and weir
Where?
hearing with the select board first, before they come to the planning board.
And that was a dock that would not have gotten approved by the
So
planning
the
board.
select board and the one you're talking about rejected the wharf and wear application for that one.
Oh,
This
you don't-
wharf and wear application was approved by the select board at its last meeting.
Okay. I personally, my opinion is that I think it would be dandy to fix up that dock. And if the select board has approved that, which would override anything that we did, I think.
No.
no,
So they are looking at it
It's a
from a
series-
navigation
a series.
perspective
All right,
as a select
trying to
board.
find
So
a
that's
wiggle
their
room.
review process, and then you are the ones that review it for the land use perspective.
right.
So this is in your
You're-
purview, not the select board's.
So I think what you're hearing is that the people on the board like this application, but there is a concern whether the language of the ordinance allows it.
Understood.
And one option in the limit, not the fast option, would be to change the ordinance.
Would MMA come back and say, oh, you can't do that with the velocity zones, no one else in the state does that?
They're not gonna say,
I don't know what they're gonna do. All right.
I've never had to make a definitive.
All right, so what do we do?
I think what I'd like to propose is that we continue the initial review until we hear back from this legal question.
And you've seen our comments.
Yeah, I did see the comments. None of those comments pertain to the discussion that we've really gotten
Yeah.
into tonight.
Yeah.
You know, they were the other things, you know, like the Army Corps permit, that, if you were to read the next line down, you know, so this was approved by the Army Corps under the PGP, which expired in 2025. But if you're under contract before that expiration date, you're granted another year. So our Army Corps permit is actually valid until 2026. So we have until October to install it. Even if that were to surpass, then under the new Army Corps standards, they wouldn't even issue us a permit for this. So,
At all?
Wouldn't-
at all,
You mean they would
correct.
deny you one, or they
No,
just,
they
they're
wouldn't
not
even-
involved?
You
They
wouldn't
wouldn't
even get a
even,
new-
they wouldn't issue it. We meet their minimum standards, and they wouldn't even,
You wouldn't need a permit?
we would need a permit from the Corps.
Just wanted to
And we have been
clarify.
granted a permit from the DEP. So if anything were to change and we're smaller than what was originally approved, our DEP permit's still valid. We just haven't exercised it to its fullest extent. And then, trying to think of what the other comments
That
were.
was
Existing conditions plan, which, yeah, that's not a problem. And labeling the contour elevations, that's not a problem.
And that's the contour elevation. Just the contours are on there, so
Yeah.
having them labeled would
Yep.
be
Yep, no,
helpful
that's,
for clarifying.
Some parts of what the board does, it's in the language that we have to consider the character of the town and detriment to the community. In terms of considering the character of the town and detriment to the community, a dock that is less safe would also be a consideration, I think.
Just,
I'm finding wiggle room, man.
no,
But on the flip side, a dock that was wider and more welcoming would encourage folks to go out and visit this property that's owned by the Kennebunkport Trust. Right?
I think that does not seem to be discourse here that Goat Island is a lovely place to visit and people should be able to do so. What we don't want to do is set a precedent
Yeah.
for people to
No, I
come
get it.
before the
I
board.
totally get it.
So,
Yeah, so
you know,
let's
we'll
just
check in with
deal with
MMA
that.
Legal, we'll give you
Yeah.
their perspective and we can certainly work from
Yeah.
there.
fair enough.
So we're gonna continue the initial
You
review.
started it.
Do we have a second on that? I would propose.
I second that.
All right.
Continued initial review.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Anybody else got a dock?
At least I didn't talk about septics or vernal pools.
No way.
Are you threatening us?
Still openings on the board. But for all those watching at TV land, that's part of the fun of this.
We're gonna go on to, the next item, SP 260016, 7 Halcyon Way. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, you are.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lena Toby. I'm with Walsh Engineering, and I'm here on behalf of Denise Deschines, who owns the property at 7 Halcyon Way. I have a quick PowerPoint just to really show some visuals to speak to. So if you could go to the next slide, please. There's only a couple of these. So the project's located at 7 Halcyon Way. The majority of the property has a flood zone VE, a velocity zone on the property at elevation 15. Next slide, please. So the need for the project, there's been a lot of ponding, pooling, just stormwater drainage issues going on this property. So there's an existing cross culvert that runs under the driveway from the far end that you can see towards us. Exactly, pops out right there. The upstream end of that culvert on the other side of the driveway is actually not located at the low point. And so it's not doing a very good job of getting water out of there. It's also a 6-inch pipe, and so it's likely clogged as well. So there's just inadequate drainage on this property. Next slide, please. So this is the existing condition. This is a little bit hard to see, but there's a large contributing watershed when you look at the top of the page, kind of working down towards the property. That's a whole slope just coming right down towards the ocean. The ocean's at the bottom of this screenshot, as you can see it. You can see that driveway cross culvert kind of drawn in. It's just that line that crosses diagonally across the driveway. And the low point is actually located about 15 feet to the left. So it's not really picking up all that drainage. It's not in a great spot, and it's too small. Next slide, please. This is just a drone image of the existing conditions, but you can see the staining on the driveway. That's why I wanted to show this picture. The water pools right there until it eventually drains out and off the driveway. But right now, there's just a low spot right at that point on the driveway. And so really what we're looking to do is just raise that up and replace that driveway cross culvert. I also put an arrow just to some erosion you can see on the roadway up there, and that just kind of speaks to the quantity of water that's rushing right down to this property.
How bad was it last week?
Real bad. Yeah, real bad.
And this is just a rainwater situation, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, all rainwater.
Yep.
Next, please. So this is the proposed condition plan. So really what we're looking to do is raise the driveway a maximum of 1.5 feet, but in most places it's less than a foot. And so we just want to get rid of that low spot, that staining that you can see. We're going to raise that up so the water sheets off the driveway. It's either going to move down towards the bottom of the page and sheet off to the left, or it's going to kind of go backwards and hit that riprap apron and that cross culvert. And we're going to increase the size of that culvert to a 12-inch. So hopefully that will reduce clogging in the future. And we also sized that culvert adequately per the upstream drainage system, or drainage watershed. Next slide. These are the permitting requirements for the project real quick. This project does not require a NERPA permit because we are 75 feet from the hat and doing just maintenance. From the DEP's perspective, we'll need to get site plan review, and then after we'd go to the code office for activities and land use and flood hazard. And I believe that's all. Yes. Any questions? That's actually not a picture from this project that should have been taken out.
Wait a minute.
Forgot you saw that. That was the last time I was here.
Is that East
Before East Ave,
That was
yeah.
8 North Street.
That's Mirror Point in Brunswick right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's North Street. Yes. Oops.
They all start to look the same, don't they?
Laney, you mentioned in the application that there's a separate project to replace the existing septic system,
Yes.
and that somehow there's some coupling between the two.
What we did is we just showed the approximate location of the septic system. If you don't mind going back 2 slides, I can show you that. This is not a permit for the septic system. It's being designed, replaced, and permitted by others. But what I wanted to do on here is show the proposed grading as part of that septic system replacement, which would be, like I said, permitted separately. But really, we're making the slope more gradual, coming down beside the house there, and then we're going to put a little boulder retaining wall, just to, again, to decrease the steepness of that slope.
But the location of the septic is remaining.
Correct.
Thank you. Joe?
Jim actually, yeah,
I did the
is working on
design
that.
for that, and it is in exactly the same location.
It's elegant.
Can you go back a picture?
Sure.
So, the house is on the left here, right?
Correct. Yes.
And so what do these folks on the right say about all this?
We will be doing the work entirely on the 7 Halcyon Way property, and so we have not consulted with them, but they'll be getting the public notice for the public hearing.
Okay.
Is there any reason why you'd think they'd be concerned?
I don't
Other than the
think so.
activity? I mean, but
No, we're not pushing any stormwater towards that property.
Who owns this part of it? Do they, or does
So-
your-
That is owned by Denise, and then it
Okay.
cuts off, there's a right-of-way, the Halcyon Way itself proper, comes down, that's actually what that long part of the driveway is, and then it cuts off, where you can see that sign, to the right side of the oval, right there, yeah, it actually comes straight down from there, so we're not proposing anything, off of Denise's property.
Okay. And they don't actually care, now I see, they probably park up on that garage.
Yeah, they're actually in a really good position because they're way higher,
So they're
yeah.
like, yeah, I don't care, they can't get to your house.
Yeah, all my water's
Yeah.
going to Denise's, so
Right,
it's all
okay.
good, yeah.
All right, got it.
So while this picture's up, you're essentially going to go from a 6-inch to a 12-inch down here,
Correct.
and you're going to raise up the driveway a little bit. We can't see it here, so that the water will go either there or there rather than pooling up.
Exactly. Oh, there's a
Do
laser
you,
pointer.
and so it will not, you're gonna do it such that it won't pool right here in these folks' land?
Correct. So,
property, right?
I got a laser pointer. I can be a little more prescriptive
yeah,
now, and
yeah.
I might just blind George.
Because
There,
you said that it wasn't doing its job today, like
it's
where it
not
was located.
because it's located right here, like under this bush. So
Okay.
it's not really doing anything. The low point is actually right here, and so we're
Okay.
gonna move that pipe to here
Yeah.
instead.
Good. I thought the pipe was there. That's
That's actually there's a foundation drain right here that pops out from the building, but that cross culvert's over here.
even from this, you can tell that's the low point.
Exactly. So I'm not sure why the pipe was over here in the first place, but we'll fix that.
You're leaving the end point about the same, right?
Correct.
This was my understanding.
Yeah,
of the
exactly
plans
the
that-
same.
Jim didn't
Yep.
put that pipe in.
Should have been bigger.
What's,
It's got clean water going through it. I only got
Okay.
the other end.
and
Bad one.
what's the paving material?
They're not going to be paving, just finishing with gravel.
Okay.
Any questions?
I really don't.
No.
Did you have a memo in the sky?
Yes, so a couple of comments that are mostly administrative. Impervious surface calculations, we'd love to see on the plans themselves, especially the final ones for signature.
Okay.
And also lot line setbacks, because there is some construction taking place close to the lot lines. It would be nice to have those on there for reference.
Definitely.
And then our code officer requested an estimate of the amount of fill you're expecting to bring onto the site.
Yes, we'll get that to you. I've got a supplemental info package probably coming in tomorrow with
Okay.
that info.
Great. And then since you have one submitted, if you could submit the copy of the HHE 200 form with this for the septic tank, that'd be great. And a minor update to the planning board application document that was submitted doesn't have it checked that it's in the resource protection area, but it is in the flood zone, so it is in the resource protection zone.
Sure.
And then you touched on this briefly in your presentation, so I think you've answered this, but the Public Works Operations Manager, he just wanted to confirm that the 12-inch culvert is, that, you know, the flow rate that you have analyzed for the property, that the 12-inch culvert is enough to manage that flow, because more of it is being directed towards that culvert.
Sure, yeah, and I'll submit, we did a little HydroCAD model, stormwater model of that, so we can
Perfect.
submit that.
Great.
So, Just out of curiosity, I mean, as I look at this, gravity and nature, regardless of what's happening on the lawn, is saying the water is draining right here, right?
Yeah, that's
So
what
why
you
not
would
just put
think.
like just through the road right here, like a.
Two issues for that. Yeah, one, it's not on Denise's property.
know.
Number two is that regardless of, so the,
It's a new
it
outfall.
slopes down to this point right here, but actually, her property builds back up. There's a really decent sized mound here of cobble that's been kind of washed up. It's actually pretty close to a mapped dune system. And so there's a big mound. It goes up and over and then down towards the water. So that's another reason why we didn't want to have to go through that mound. Yeah, it's not really draining this way right now. It's just kind of sitting there.
All right. We can deal with that later. Okay.
And there was a question, we answered that with 12 inch, we already did that. I would make a motion that this application is complete.
Look, I'm gonna just make sure that I understand what the missing information is from what Nadia just went through. You've agreed to provide some information on impervious surfaces in the next couple of days or so.
Yep.
You have it, it's just not on the plans right now. The lot setbacks,
Yes, we can put those on.
the amount of fill.
Yes.
I didn't understand the septic form.
The HHE 200 form is basically just the application form for a new septic system. So it's, if Jim already did it, they'll have it on file. So
Okay.
should be an easy thing to
That
submit.
refers to the specific form that the state of Maine uses for a septic design, the
But-
HAP 200.
And you're saying if it's available, you'd like it, but we agree that it's not part of this application. It's just,
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the record just to understand that since the septic plan is shown on the plans that the board will be approving, that septic plan has been approved and is not anticipated to cause any problems.
So if they had sneakily left that off of the plan, we wouldn't be asking.
Right, but it's just, if the planning board approves something, it
Right,
can put
that's
us
on the plan.
in an awkward position later
Understood.
if it was
Do you want
not.
a job as a consultant?
No way. I don't want to be accountable for
and
anything.
by doing that, we don't have to add a condition that says this can't be construed as approving the septic plan.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, on another project, I might just take it off, but now that, knowing we've got it, I'll just
We're not
submit it. It's
doing
fine.
There you go.
You got it.
Honesty, so you
You're gonna
remember what you
check
said.
off, you're gonna go back and edit the application to check the box on RP.
Yes.
And you said you've got some HydroCAD confirmation at the 12-inch. Do you need that, or do you just need what Lenny said? Yeah, we did HydroCAD.
The HydroCAD calculations would be great. We'll include those in the file.
Include those
It'll
as
be
well.
helpful.
That'd be awesome. That's a complete list, you think? So given that, and that's all achievable in the next few days, I'm sure, I would second your motion. That
All
this
right.
is and all in favor?
Aye.
This is a complete application. Thank you.
Thank you,
And I
guys.
just want to note for anyone who may be watching at home, when I sent out the abutter notices, I made an administrative error and said that this was to split a lot in a subdivision. To assuage any confusion, this is not a subdivision, it's just some grading.
Yes, not a sub. The client called and was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"What?"
Oh,
I've spoken to a
Okay.
couple of butters, so we should be good to go, but
I bet you have.
for the record, this is not a subdivision plan, and the public hearing notice will be edited accordingly.
Not a problem.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
You bet.
do we have a volunteer for a case manager on this?
Sure. I think I'm doing two right now.
Oh, I'll do
Oh, will you? Oh,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Rick.
it. Sure.
And then did you guys assign one for Goat Island as well?
We did not.
That-
I took Mills.
They came up before. I was not at that meeting when
No,
it came up
Goat
before.
Island did not come up. That-
Oh,
that-
They asked to
pushed off?
No,
postpone, so
as
this
soon
was
as
their
we knew
first
you
meeting.
weren't gonna be here, that was it.
It's a dock, I should probably take it.
Thank you, George.
Our
That'll
dock
help us-
expert.
That'll help us out,
I'm the dock guy.
It could
Mr.
take
Dodd.
months.
I'd like to move on then to item 4, which is 57 Old Cape Road, 26001, Major. And this is a public hearing is scheduled for this evening.
You ready for me?
Yes, sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, board members. We appreciate the opportunity to be here before you again this evening. I am Jim Logan, wetland scientist professional, licensed soil scientist, and licensed site evaluator. That would be those of us that design septic systems for a living in the state of Maine. And we are here tonight for the public hearing of what is a major modification to an existing subdivision, the Harrington Division. I'll pronounce it clearly, not Harriman, but Harrington Division, which was on Old Cape Road. This particular site is the original lot number 3 of that Harrington Division. And we are proposing to divide that original lot number 3 into 2 lots, proposing to call them Lot 3A and 3B, so as to have no future confusion. I believe in the last meeting, addressed all outstanding details from the very thorough memo that was produced by the planning department. I want to personally thank the planning department in this case, because the new iteration of the memo that I received back from them was enhanced and included a series of boxes toward the end that referenced specific ordinance sections, referenced waivers requested, and the reason for the requests. I want to just suggest to the board that that particular kind of a memo is a fine thing for a consultant like us to get back. It's very clear, provides good guidance, and I think it does a good job leading the board through your ordinance with respect to this application. So I want to thank the planning staff, because it's a very helpful memo.
Thank you for noticing it, Jim. We notice it all the time. The staff we have is
Yeah,
amazing.
this is very enhanced now, so it's very thorough. But again, the only item I think that was outstanding from our last go-around had to do with details of road construction. We did talk about the transition from the old fire chief to the new. Old chief gave us a letter that cited the specifics in the ordinance for construction of a subdivision road or a road within a subdivision, with the specific requirement of an 18-foot travel surface, 3-foot shoulders, widening to 20 feet at the point of intersection for the hammerhead turnaround for the fire truck. We did provide details to the board through Nadia's office, and I hope that we have come up with adequate detail to make it clear what we intended by the words that we were talking about.
Was the
last
concern
time.
satisfied?
Yes.
Good. There was also, I have a note here, I'm trying to bring it back in my memory, that a road agreement was still needed. How did we end up on that?
We
Or did
I thought you all said you didn't want the road agreement.
we didn't need it,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Agreed?
Is this one where it was off-center and we just had to have a waiver for that?
That was one of the waivers requested was for that portion of the road that is not within the center.
Yeah.
Again, the justification is the fact that the wetlands are where they are, and we didn't want to impact wetlands further.
Got it right away.
So we just expanded where we had the room to expand in that particular location.
You bet.
We could still do all of the needed expansions within the 50-foot right-of-way as it was established.
Do we want to go through a list of the waivers?
I want to have the public hearing
Right,
first.
public hearing, right.
But before we do that, I wanted to ask the staff whether or not there's open issues to be resolved.
Nope. Again, you have all the waivers that are in front of you and the
Yes.
condition. And the other thing, just to note, Jim, is we just need, this is more administrative. We're going to need the signature box, so it can be recorded with the registry on the plans, at least the plans that we had online. I didn't have a signature box on them for this planning board to sign. It's okay. It's just an administrative thing. It's something we can
Yep.
address.
And a signature box on both plans,
Yep.
the road and the survey type plan.
Just print the road one as
You-
a black and white.
I don't recommend signatures on the road plan. It is part of your application materials. It will be part of the approval. It will not record well at the registry, if that's the only reason you will get signatures on it. We can put a signature box on it, but the registry will not accept it for recording.
Yeah, let's put a box on it so we can scan it at least in-house.
Okay. And how many signatures do we need? What are the numbers? One?
So it's usually 5 of them, but, yeah, do 5.
Unless we're getting any new members,
All right. I'll put 6, I'll be hopeful.
the best.
And then just a date spot so they can put the date. That's it.
So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here in the fire station that wishes to speak? Is there anyone with their hand raised in the Zoom audience? Dave?
No hands raised.
All right. With that, no public comment on this, because you've been so thorough at this point. We'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
And let's enumerate and vote on the waivers. Yeah. Do we have an easy way of doing that?
You mean to go through them all?
We did not have time to draft the findings for
Okay.
this application, so we don't have them listed out
We'll
in
do it
that
next.
way
All
here.
right.
But they are in your memo.
They're in
Yeah, I see them in the
No,
memo.
I understand. We can go through it that way. And well, I'll go through the ones and you check me on it to make sure.
Yep.
Number 14, a high-intensity soil survey. We've said that we don't think that's required in this
Correct.
case, given the soils and the fact that we're just adding an additional lot.
So, point of
We're going,
procedure, are you voting on the waivers now as you're going through them?
we're going to come to the end and then we're
No, I
going to
think,
vote
yeah,
on them
just
all at once.
collectively, right?
Are you gonna do them all at once?
Yes.
Okay,
And
Unless
then
you
they'll
have a
be,
problem.
and then they will be in the findings of fact,
got
unless
it,
Yeah.
okay.
one of us takes out.
Contour lines,
Okay, what I mean.
requesting a waiver for post-development contours, waiver requested. The contour lines have been included for 2-foot intervals. Applicant is requesting a waiver for post-development contours.
Because we're talking about just grading around 2 foundations.
We're agreed.
Hydrogeological assessment.
I'm fine
Agreed.
with granting a waiver on that.
The location of any open space to be preserved,
Makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
Waive it.
waived. And a traffic study,
Nope, don't need a traffic study. This is a unique situation.
one new house. Stormwater management plan.
I'm all set with that.
Yeah.
An erosion and sediment control plan. No major improvements will be taking place.
Not next to a pond or anything like that.
Waiver suggested. Yep, we're okay. Financial capacity, this is a very small project. No proposed infrastructure
Nope.
changes.
Nope.
Okay, no. Soil erosion, we
Nope.
already talked about that. Traffic conditions.
Nope.
Again,
Yeah, this is repetitive where you get into performance standards.
It's because it's a minor division to an
Correct.
existing subdivision. We have to go through the subdivision rules. Or major,
open
Revision.
space requirement, we agree.
waive that.
Financial, again,
Waive.
waiver requested. It's just stormwater management, open space, again.
Waive. And we mentioned the center line on the roadway.
Which we will be asked to waive and agree with that.
Yep.
No sidewalks, we agree.
No sidewalks. And no underground utilities.
No underground utilities, agreed. Am I missing any?
That's what I have.
So I would propose to grant those waivers.
Second,
In favor? Yes?
agree?
With that, I would move that we accept this application.
I would second that.
I would
Approved,
approve.
3-0. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, board members.
Appreciate your
I
patience.
very much appreciate you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Item number 5, SP 260013 for 42 Langsford Road. And we're scheduled for a public hearing tonight. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back. I've put together a little bit of a presentation to kind of answer some of the outstanding questions that were there from last meeting, to hopefully, give you guys a little bit more clarity and to clear up confusion and whatnot, and hopefully not add any more confusion. But if you guys would like to turn around, again, my name is Alan Zullo. Coastal Maine Outdoors is, I'm a partner in that, and we're trying to bring the kayak tours back to Goat Island Lighthouse, which we haven't had for 2 years. So to begin with, this is the way that the the fish market currently looks. Little parking lot there. John has moved the picnic table already. His boat is no longer in wraps. That is my truck there, but that is where he is proposing to let our kayak guide park. Everything else is the same as has been for as long as I'm aware of. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is
Fancy transition.
like that.
Yeah.
It's been about 10 years since I've done any kind of presentations. So this is what we're proposing it's gonna look like. John is allowing us to put the kayaks over here. We'll have a little sign. My marketing guy loves sandwich boards, and I told him to put a sign in there, and he did. Hopefully the bus doesn't look quite as jalopy looking there, but that is basically, that's the bus parking for John, where John is allowing us to put it.
I mean, you'll have kayak racks as opposed to just piling them up, right? Or no?
Well, that depends. I haven't bought any racks.
What?
I haven't built any racks.
All right, whatever. I don't care. Just,
John
kinda
is
slow.
okay with us doing that, and it's easy, honestly.
yeah. That's.
Makes
I
it
mean,
easy.
they're not going to be there laying around that much.
No.
All right.
Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is the site plan that I've been working from. One of the questions is the easement and how much room that we have. So in this little detail here, I'm going to blow that up in just a second. If you could jump ahead one slide, please. So kind of bringing it in a little bit closer. This is the area that's in question. Okay, stop right there. So this is the area that's in question about being tight, and the easement kind of starts right here. This secondary line to the left is the property line. This one to the right is the rail, one of the two marine rails that is part of the easement. Can you jump to the next slide, please? So using that particular preliminary site plan, I was able to find that the distance between the concrete retaining wall and the pin is about 4.79 feet. Can you go to the next slide, please? And I was actually able to find the pin. So can you jump to the next slide, please? And, okay, so it's not exactly 4.79 feet. Next slide. But part of the reason is you can see that the retaining wall shifted a little bit. So it's not perfect, but it's close enough to know exactly where the property line is. This is where the question came up that Galen's concern was, I believe. Is that correct, Galen? Mm-hmm. Okay. So right through here is the area that Galen has more concern about. Can you go to the next slide? So this is the section right here. You can see that post is beyond the end of the retaining wall. If you look here, it's kind of hard to see, but it's 27 inches. Just to kind of put that into perspective, I have an 1870 multifamily in Biddeford. My doors are all 28 inches. So that's 1 inch less. But, can you jump to the next slide? I wanted to show you guys that I'm no longer a narrow body, and I grabbed one of our widest kayaks, which was our tandem. Can you hit the next button? So this is me squeezing through there. With the kayak, it's Not bad. I squeeze through with no problem. Can you jump to the next slide? One more. There we go. And this is me bringing it back in. That little misstep there is just try to get the kayak back up on the wall. That's all.
John, you're telling us this is how you will normally be launching kayaks?
This is the location that we'll be launching kayaks
No,
from.
through that notch?
Not necessarily. Can you
Oh.
go to the next slide, please? So the nice thing about the cradle is it's kind of the trailer, it's kind of a nautical trailer. It's on slides, so it can move, right? Trailers move, the cradle moves. So John has offered to push it out for us, so then that way we have no problem. And as you can see, now we're back to the nearly 5 feet section through here.
So, who manages that cradle?
John,
So you determine when it comes up and when it comes down?
Yeah,
Okay, so, all right, and you're leasing to your business, so,
correct.
yeah, so you're gonna be working together probably?
Coordination.
Yeah, okay.
There's no reason that cradle can't be left down.
Yeah. Okay.
next slide. So I went a little bit beyond where I needed to on that point, just to kind of show, again, squeeze points, right? Can you hit the next button? So this is how much room we have when the cradle's out. Sorry about going upside down on you. And then if you can jump to the next slide, please, and hit the button one more time. So when we get out past the cradle and past the dock, this will be the area that we congregate in. And I showed this because part of the reason that Frank had talked to us was to make sure, the harbor master was to make sure that we weren't impeding any of the boat traffic coming into the town ramp. Right through here is where the channel is. The channel markers aren't here right now, but they are now. They weren't when I videotaped that.
Did I
So-
see a dock on Goat Island there?
Can
I
you
was
go back?
joking. No, I was joking, I'm joking.
Okay. Can you jump to the next slide, please? And then, any questions or comments?
Yeah, if I sign up for one of your tours and I take the bus and how do I get into the kayak?
So, can you go back a couple
I
of
mean, you
slides?
showed me how you
Yeah.
wrestled the kayak through. I'm just curious
Yeah.
what the business model is and why it's safe.
That was the worst case scenario.
Yeah, that was
No, no,
worst case
how is it
scenario.
safe for?
Can you
for-
go back
for-
a few more slides
10
there?
or
Right there.
12 newbies
Oh,
to get
Actually, go
on-
back
to get
another
into
two,
their
it's fine.
kayaks. I thought you were gonna have
So-
a kayak launch.
Wait,
So-
go back one more slide. like
Yeah,
the-
go back one more slide.
Where it was the narrow part you showed us.
Right. Keep going back. Two more, two or three, right there, right there. So what'll happen is our kayak guides will bring the boats down for us. And we'll have our guests
One at
come,
a time, or, no,
we'll have them lined up here.
okay.
And then our guests will come down and take a walk out, and we'll load each guest into the kayak,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll send them off.
Where's tide in this? What tide is this?
That was like a low, high tide, like 7 foot.
What tide is that? That's about half tide.
Okay, thank you.
Kayaking come and usually go, I come and go out of that cove 3 hours either side of high tide with a boat that draws 28 inches of water, so,
Thank you.
that's on the average of 9-foot tide. Of course, we have the 7-foot tide and we have the 11-foot tide. So
Yes, we do.
you take the average of 9 and there's a lot of time.
And the kayak draws a little bit less.
I mean,
Thank you very much.
the boat you see it saw on the cradle can come and go in 3 hours either side of high.
You bet.
Kayak is probably, on the average tide, almost 4 hours either side.
So usually when I put people in
We-
boats, I'm holding the boat.
We're getting off mic and we probably shouldn't.
Do you want them to?
No, it's all
Okay.
No, that's fine.
But it's a small town like
Well,
we've
I
had
was-
2 fish markets, a dock, 2
George,
docks.
I'm pushing on it only because I was trying to picture
Right,
for
I
safety
agree with you.
concerns, people who don't get in and out of kayaks all the time, how that's gonna go, and if one of them has a problem and you have to bring someone back quickly, how are they gonna get out of the kayak and how are emergency services gonna get access to the scene? You got a thought on that?
There is also, you saw the dock out back
I'm
on
sure
the
you do.
last video.
Yeah,
John said, if like someone with mobility issues, or we gotta bring somebody out, we
Yeah.
can use the dock to get them up, or put them back in.
Yeah, okay.
But this is the preferred
understood.
launch for our business.
Right, and 99% of the time, you're not gonna have those type of issues, but
Right, and again, we spent from 2009 to 2024 launching on the other side of the harbor
you have
in what used to
experience
be,
doing this.
yeah, we have experience doing that. And all of my guides have been doing these tours. Teresa's started the business, she's been doing it the whole time, and one of the other guides, who's our main guide now, is, he's been doing it just about as long, I think 2014 or 2015 is when he's been doing it since. So,
Any other questions? We do have a public hearing
No,
scheduled for this. How about from the
Repeat
town?
this
Any
one.
open questions?
Thank you, this helped a lot.
thank you.
So, you all right if I open the public hearing at this point?
Can I ask one question? I just wanted,
Please.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, but, so, I like the presentation.
Thank you.
Slick, yeah.
Just wanna make sure, you showed the van or the bus, whatever you wanna call it.
Yep.
People are they're going to where to come here? They're not gonna be
So
parking on
our
Langsford Road.
storefront is down by Federal Jacks.
Right,
That's
and that's where they will
Coastal
meet.
Maine Outdoors. That's where people are gonna meet us, and then we'll bring the bus
You'll
down,
transport
pick
them.
them up, and transport them. So we're either gonna pick them up from there or the parking lot out here, and then
And then they'll bring
transport
them
them
back.
out.
That's
to,
Kennebunk Day,
Cape
we don't
Cod.
care.
And we've added a proposed condition in the findings of fact that, any guests for the kayak tours won't be allowed to park on Langsford Road, so no
Yeah.
parking allowed outside of that bus and guide
It doesn't
parking.
exist.
Yep.
Right, and I addressed that at the first meeting when you weren't here, as if we do have people who wanna drive themselves down, I'm gonna have them park either at the head of Langsford Road, like where the public parking area is, or, one of the abutters had suggested I work with Noonan's Lobster Hut, or possibly Fireman's Park, find some alternative parking solutions that way. The other option that I'm giving my guests is to rent bikes from us and ride down.
Very good.
you should do a package deal.
Working on that,
There you go.
along with lobster
So I
rolls
would,
possibly.
like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here at the firehouse who would like to speak to this? Had a question or comment? Anybody online?
No hands raised.
No hands raised, then we'll close the public hearing.
Oh, now we have a hand raised.
Oh, we would like to hear from that person then.
LM, you can speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Doug Martin. I'm here with my wife Lisa, and we're representing ourselves and my in-laws, Maya Jansen and Paul Bishkovich, who own the house down at 17 Langsford Road, closer to Ward Road, that intersection.
I'm sorry, Doug, you're at 17 Langsford?
Yes.
Okay, all four of you.
Yeah, so my in-laws own the house, and we're frequent guests.
Thank you.
So I have just a couple we did listen, my wife and I listened into the application completion meeting a couple of weeks ago. So we're, so familiar with that presentation and have just recently seen what was presented tonight. A couple of concerns and a couple of questions. The concern, obviously, is what we've been talking about is traffic. Langsford Road, there's reference to, potentially parking at the head of Langsford Road, and if anybody's familiar with that area, it's essentially a one-way street with all the parking that's already being used. Typically, there's a new shop that's being opened up very close to 17 Langsford. It's there with very minimal parking. With all the activity, that whole stretch is essentially typically unavailable for reliable parking. So our concern is traffic. There's a lot of dog walkers, kids, bicyclists, and all those kind of things that, we're concerned about potential, traffic issues. So if it were just limited to one bus that was parked in front of John's place, that's one thing. But if other people are using, local parking to come in to or bicycles for that matter, to use the facility and to go on these tours, that's a concern. It's very limited space. There's gonna be a big construction project, which you folks brought up a couple of weeks ago, right across the street. There's a demo and rebuild that, will add to the traffic. There's very minimal parking. So our concern, relates to that primarily, and again, having, emergency, services available to get in if they need to be, again,
Of course.
Couple of questions though, and there's been some reference to, bicycling and some other, potential activities. And, certainly, is there a possibility that this opportunity be expanded for like kayak rentals at this facility? Because obviously if there's rentals, whether someone's bicycling there or driving there, that's gonna create a traffic and parking issue. Also with respect to the, I know your company, the applicant's company also does bike touring, are there plans to bring in, bike rentals and tour, organizations at this facility? It's just a concern that we have, and just wanna see if there's a way to minimize, expansion of the operation.
Okay.
Is that,
I'm gonna ask Alan to deal with that. I think he's alluded to his position on this, but
Yep.
let's clarify.
so, in the last meeting, I pointed out that, I don't wanna do kayak rentals. Number one, because it becomes more of a free-for-all, and it's hard to maintain control, and if somebody, something happens out in the water there, then that does become a safety concern. But also, at the end of last season, when we brought our kayaks back, what's that place? Sandy Pines called me and said, hey, I hear you're bringing kayaks back. When Kayak Excursions leaves to go to Florida, and they take their boats out, can you bring your boats in and rent for our guests? And I checked with insurance, and insurance, I don't know why or what's changed in 2 years, but insurance won't cover me for kayak rentals. So that's the first piece, that I don't plan to expand, especially this location, to kayak rentals. It's just too much. When we had the kayak rentals in the Kennebunk River, everybody was safe, but there were a lot of complaints from the boaters about, kayaks not giving way and getting in the way. So that's a personal concern of mine. I don't want to deal with any of that
So
headache.
would you be okay with, and I don't know if we've already discussed this, but like a condition that no rentals, launch only?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tours only.
This application is for the tours
Tours only,
tours.
correct, yep, okay.
that
Yeah.
are organized out of federal jacks.
Yes, yeah, we're just using this as a launch site. As far as traffic, again, I'm just gonna go back to, that's the whole reason I'm planning to buy a bus if we get the okay. And I thought that adding a few bicycles to the mix would not be, it would keep traffic lighter. I understand some people think that bicycles are in the way too, so I get that. I don't know if that addresses your traffic concern completely.
One is also parking. So there was parking, you had suggested people might park down at the head of Langsford Road.
Right,
That's
where the
gotta be
public parking
close to
already
about
is.
a half a mile, I mean, up past the church.
Right, right. And that's where, one of the residents also suggested maybe talking to Noonan's Lobster Hut.
Right.
To rent their lot, or
Might wanna
possibly
talk to-
parking down
talk
at
to the
Fireman's
church.
Park. I'm sorry?
Talk to the church.
The church, yeah.
The church, I just was at an event at Atlantic Hall, and we could park on the church parking lot behind Bradbury's because they had rented
But
that
it-
from them.
That's a possibility.
It sounds like you wanted to have more control, have them come to your
Yes.
location and bring them over on a bus.
That's right. My preference is to bring them by bus or have them ride bikes over. That's
How
my
many
preference.
kayaks, how many seats in a bus?
It's gonna be a 14-passenger bus.
Yes.
Because we don't wanna go over to the CDL level of busing. So we currently have 16 seats in kayaks. And we can take 12 at a time for our tours.
Yep.
Register main guide state law says we can do up to 12
Okay.
per guide.
So that works with that
If
bus.
we go over 12, we need to have a second guide. And if we do that, that'll be a special thing. And then the other question
That was about rentals of kayaks and/or organizing tours out of this site.
Yep, and then there was traffic, and I thought there was one more.
Doug, are we covering your concerns correctly?
Yeah, it was just the bike rental concept, and
Oh.
if you're not planning on doing that, that answers that for me. I appreciate your responses. I have one more just comment, opinion, whatnot, and just to share, I appreciate the visuals, the way you showed people accessing with kayaks. I do a lot of kayaking. Our whole family does a lot of kayaking in the area. We're familiar with, moving boats around and sneaking through, wherever to get access. But my feeling is that while you can do that, if you have 12 or 14 people with kayaks, it's asking a lot to have them snaking through between, in that slot that you showed. And I think what's probably gonna happen realistically, and it's a concern, is that the town boat ramp, which is right next there, is gonna end up being utilized for loading, unloading, and a lot of people. So that's not really used for commercial purposes, as far as I understand. It just an opinion. Again, I appreciate the visuals. I know you can technically get down there. It's a slip hazard on the rails. There's some physical issues, I think.
Safety issues.
Right, trying to sneak in there. So I guess I'll say good luck with that, and, I
Appreciate that, thank you.
Doug.
thank you.
Are there any other hands raised, David?
No.
With that,
We did receive one written correspondence, and that was from Maya Janssen, from 17 Langsford Road. Her and her husband, huh?
that's the same.
That's what we just had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I think that's their, so I
So
just
this-
wanted to let you know for the
okay.
record that we did receive
Okay.
from, I believe, the parents
parents own
that
it.
own
Did
the
it,
property.
did it dovetail with the concerns that Doug just expressed?
They talked about the traffic, parking, buses.
Concern for rentals?
Yep, they were concerned about that. And then it would turn the street into a commercial operation and endanger the lives of the children walking in the area. That's her concerns.
Obviously don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, then, I'd like to close the public hearing. And are there any other questions from the board? Any other questions or concerns from the town?
We had no outstanding comments.
We're ready to vote on this?
Well, one question I just wanted to make sure I understood, and I think we asked this last time. Is your lease for this arrangement annual? Are you gonna come up before us every year and say, hey, I need to renew this lease, or is this an agreement that you guys have, or?
We're gonna start with 1 year lease and see how it goes.
Okay, I don't know the situation with the business there. What if you decide to reopen, or who knows, and there's no space left anymore, or?
Well, I think we're given if we give an okay on this, it's gonna be conditional on the,
On your
what's been presented here.
arrangement that you have? Okay, I'm okay then.
Yeah. And not, I don't wanna see them, if nothing's changed, I don't wanna see them in a year.
Okay.
Can I make one comment?
Oh, yeah, come on, and introduce yourself, John.
For the record, John Green, I own 42 Langsford. This is being looked at from you, I hope, as an added thing to the Fish House property. We're not doing away with the retail wholesale business.
Not a
It's-
replacement?
Right.
Yep.
We're not replacing it from one to the other, it's added,
No,
for the
Correct.
record,
agreed.
Yes,
Yeah.
For the record,
I agree.
for the record.
all right.
Yeah.
It would
Thank
make
you.
great use of
Well
a
done.
new dock on Goat Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
The docks should go.
Perhaps. Perhaps. With that, I would close the public hearing, and I would make a motion to approve this application.
I would second.
And all in favor?
All agree? and we wish you all the best with it.
Did you?
Thank you very much.
Good work.
Appreciate that,
Uh,
thank you.
Point of
Enjoy and be
clarification.
safe.
Hold on.
Point of clarification. Did you go through the waivers?
No, I didn't
Okay.
recall that there were any waivers.
Yes, there is.
There are several.
There are several. So, first waiver is setbacks from the water bodies and lot lines. Next one is a waiver for the landscaping plan and the tree diameter, that they're not doing any tree survey.
No.
Waiver for the topography with the contours. There is a condition recommended about the parking area. I think that was covered. I think we're okay there with that. The next one is a waiver from the stormwater systems and waste disposal from being on the plans. A waiver for landscape and buffering plan, waiver for lighting, details. There is one here about signs. I think you can say, waiver for that, but, I think Mr. Zola knows that any new signs would have to get a sign permit with the code enforcement office. And then you also have a waiver for proposed floor area, because again, there is no floor
No
area
floor
for
area.
this. So those were the outstanding waivers that,
Understood.
yeah.
I would move that we accept those waivers and condition as so read
Second
by
that.
the planning.
I would agree.
Yep.
There we go.
Okay.
Good
Thank
work.
you for pointing
Have
that out.
fun.
Appreciate that.
And we have the next item on the agenda. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Natarajan. 122 Ocean Ave, SP 260015.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm here in regards to the Port Lobster. I have some updated plans here for you.
Thank you.
We do whatever Nadia says.
Thanks. I think, yeah, we've seen these.
The plans have the square footages as you asked per usage.
Yes, thank you. So a little bit bigger kitchen, substantially bigger retail, although consistent with the parking area. And you took it from fish processing. Storage stays the same. Total stays the same.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. And you did the upstairs.
Yep.
Bathrooms upstairs with storage, attic, office.
And we're not touching that, that's staying, that's
You bet.
remaining.
Lovely, thank you.
And it's a classic old attic storage. It's got all kinds of stuff hanging in it. It's really kind of creepy, but,
Probably very valuable stuff.
Do a
at some
haunted
point.
fish house on
Yeah, haunted
Halloween.
fish house, I'm telling you, right out of the horror movies.
Okay.
Got big hooks and stuff. I mean,
So to me, the only action I was focused on was this one of the before and after. That's certainly satisfied. Anything else that we were looking for?
No, this is good.
No.
Thank you.
Are there conditions or concerns from the code enforcement that we still haven't attended to?
We had no comments outstanding. The floor area issues were resolved, and the breakdown was put on the plan, so
Yeah.
I had no outstanding comments.
Nicely done. Then, this is a public hearing this evening, and I'll open the floor for comments here. I can see there'll be no comments from the gallery here. We're down to
somebody hiding out
the
back.
real concerned individuals. How about online? Is there anyone with a hand raised?
No hands raised online.
No hands raised online. We'll then propose to close the public hearing.
Are there any waivers?
Are there any waivers?
Yes, you have waivers from lot lines, applicable zone, high water mark from any setbacks. You have a waiver request for location of all existing and proposed buildings and structures, streets, easements, because again, this is interior, so we didn't need that for this project. You have a waiver request for all setbacks from the body of waters and lot lines. You have a waiver request for all existing physical features, because again, this is interior.
No change.
You have a waiver for topography of contour lines. You have a waiver for location of design of existing and proposed stormwater systems, sanitary waste disposal systems, and potable water supply. You have a waiver from landscape buffering plan because it's interior. You have a waiver for lighting details and fixtures, just knowing that any new exterior fixtures will have to comply with chapter 245. And you have a waiver request for signs. That's what I have right now. And then again, for conditions.
No new signs were proposed, though.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just for your conditions, no seating is there for restaurants, so that's one
Yep.
condition.
Yeah, it's a takeout facility as it is now.
I would make a motion that we approve all those waivers and condition.
Second,
Aye.
3-0.
Make a motion that we approve the application.
Second. Aye.
That's it.
Good work.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing those changes.
I'm gonna go home and eat dinner.
Wish you all the best.
Yeah. Good job.
All right, thanks,
I think
Sonny.
he owes you a lobster roll now.
Yeah, you might change that sandwich board to a lobster roll board.
So wait,
No, there's no waiting.
I've never been to this this lobster place. What is it?
It's right next to
Like,
Mabel.
which one? I know exactly where it is, but I always thought it was just like a warehouse.
Well, that was his point, that it's not conducive, but it's nice.
But what is it gonna be? Like, what are you gonna just
Fish market.
go up with a little
Takeout.
Oh,
It's a
Yeah,
fish
you can
market.
go
so
in
I'll
there
buy
and
a piece of fish.
lobster roll.
I walk,
Or lobster rolls and.
small town life. I walk down there and buy fish.
Nice.
Or they had some, I think you could buy a bottle of wine
They
in
do have
there.
a bottle of wine, they have lemons.
So if you were gonna go on a picnic,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I'm doing a commercial for.
Oh, cool. All right,
For
no, that's
lobster,
good.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's been a good spot.
Yeah. that's good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Probably be better advertised,
Yeah.
but with no bigger
I was looking
size.
for halibut last week, and I called and I.
Was it
kept
open?
answering machine. I forgot. They're not open.
Ah, okay.
So 3 seats.
So let me ask, we have a findings of fact that I see.
I like that.
We haven't got findings of fact yet, right?
I'm making
late.
I'm making some manual edits. I did actually forget to add the seating condition to the findings of fact, so making a quick edit.
You wanna read them next time, or you think it would help them if we did it tonight?
I think that they would
Okay.
appreciate it being done today.
Okay.
The 42 Langsford one, not, the 42 Langsford Road one, I think that we feel
And Wolf
good about from staff, and I
as well.
think that Rick was the case manager, and I did hear from him that he received the findings and.
You sent that to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna ask you to read that one.
Okay.
No good deed.
Now, just as a
And I'll read
matter
this
of-
one if you want.
When we read finding of fact, do we literally need to read every line?
Yes.
No.
Really?
Yes. Well, when we get to the section
Who said
like,
yes?
anything enumerated.
I
below,
looked it online and they're like, no, you should summarize it, but I'll do what you guys said.
You can go through what is it called,
Yeah, like the 12 things, and we say.
Because we went
1
to
through
the
3,
select
1
board
through
meeting the
12,
other
right.
night,
Yep.
and that was the fastest meeting in history. They were like, bam, bam, liquor license, yes, this, that. Yeah,
Remember
Nadia,
your
I thought-
quasi-traditional boards.
Nadia, I thought you checked with MMA and they said there wasn't any strict requirement for even reading these. It was just common practice.
Well, it's easier just to just do it. I'll
I
just
think
read it.
it's the findings
Oh my
of
God,
fact.
we could have read it already.
The findings of fact, my understanding is that they should be entered into the record somehow,
Yeah.
and reading them is the most transparent and effective way to
Okay.
do so. So,
Absolutely.
strictly legally
If
speaking,
you look at our bylaws.
you don't necessarily have to read the
We
findings,
don't
but
have, we
but
don't,
it is advised.
it's not
to
mentioned
do
in our
so.
bylaws at all.
George.
So read it?
You can
Right.
read it, and again,
Those were never approved.
there is waivers there, you can say the
Well, that was
waivers,
your point.
like the numbers, if that's.
Okay, all right, let's
easier
just,
They were mentioned.
planning board findings of fact and decision. Applicant, Alan
I need to
Zulo.
write that.
Property location, 42 Langsford Road. Zoning district, Cape Porpoise West Zone. Application type, site plan review. Project summary, the applicant proposes to use an existing structure as a launch site for kayak tours to surrounding islands. The project site is .14 acre parcel located at 42 Langsford Road in Kennebunkport. The property is located within the Cape Porpoise West Zone and is subject to planning board review under 240-10.2 of the Kennebunk Town Code. Procedural history. Date of application, 4/6. All of these are 2026. Date deemed complete by board, 5/6. Date of public hearing, 5/20. Decision date, 5/20. Documents submitted. They submitted a number of documents. Waivers requested. 240-10.16. All setbacks from body of water and lot lines approved by the board. 240-10.6C. All existing physical features on site and within 200, or should I just say, that was approved by the board. 240-10.6C. Topography, approved by the planning board. 240-10.6C. 11. Location and design of existing and proposed stormwater systems, sanitary waste disposal systems, and potable water supply and methods of solid waste, approved by the board. 240-10.6C. 12. Landscaping and buffering, approved by the board. 240-10.6C. 13. Lighting, approved by the board. 240-10.6C. 14. Location and dimension of signs was approved by the board. 240-10.6. 15. Proposed use of all floor area, also approved by the board. Findings of fact. Right, title, or interest. The applicant demonstrated a legal interest in the property by submitting a quitclaim deed, which was recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds, April 8th, 1997. Pursuant to the requirements of section 240-10.10.a of the land use ordinance, the planning board shall approve an application for site plan review unless it makes one or more of the following written findings with respect to proposed development. Should I read all of these, or? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 16.
Are they all met?
And no to all was the findings.
That works.
When the proposed development is located on the shoreland or resource protection zone, in addition to the requirements of section 240-10.10.a above, the board shall approve it with conditions if it makes a positive finding based on the information presented that the proposed use, there are 8, and the findings was yes to all. Conclusions and decisions, sections 240-10.10a and 240-10.10b of the land use ordinance mandate that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that would otherwise compel denial. And, as noted above, the board makes no such findings. Decision. The site plan application identified above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval. The applicants pursuant to 10.12.e shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. No assignment or transfer of rights to construct an approved project is valid without prior review and approval by the planning board. 2, the applicants must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the form of a copy thereof attested by the Register of Deeds before any permit may issue or before any construction activity may commence. The applicant shall comply with all terms and conditions of the Town of Kennebunkport ordinances. All guests on the tour must be bussed in from Coastal Maine Outdoors main location. No guest parking is permitted on Langsford Road or the launch site. Coastal Maine Outdoors is not permitted use of the public boat launch at map 29, block 1, lot 3 for any commercial boat launching or retrieval activity. That is it.
Make a motion to approve those findings of fact.
Second?
Favor?
Aye.
Is there any other business?
Yeah, we're gonna read the findings of fact for 122 Ocean Ave into the record as well.
Should I sign this while I'm here?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Were there any initials on there?
No.
Town of Kennebunkport, Maine Planning Board findings of fact and decision. The applicant was 122 Ocean Ave LLC, Mr. Sunny Natarajan. And the property is located at 122 Ocean Ave, map 8, block 8, lot 11. It's in the riverfront zone, both shoreland and resource protection overlays. It is a site plan review. Project summary, the applicant proposes to change the use of the existing structure from fish processing to retail. Can I just, maybe I should have read this in advance. Can we just clarify? It's still gonna be fish processing. It's still gonna be, it's retail and it's still gonna be retail. So it's gonna, what they're doing is they're adjusting the mix between fish processing and retail, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. The project site is a .14 acre parcel located at 122 Ocean Ave in Kennebunkport. It's located within the riverfront zone and is subject to planning board review under 240-10.2 of the town code. Application was 4/21/2026. It was complete on 5/6. There was a public hearing this evening, 5:20. Decision also this evening, 5:20. The documents submitted, along with the cover letter, there was a construction permit, a warranty deed, the tax map, the 200-foot abutters list, existing and proposed floor plans, and memos from town staff dated 5/8/26. Waivers, a long list. Plan of the high water, and all of these waivers, submission waivers, that were not really applicable to this application. A plan of the area showing the lot line dimensions, the location of all existing and proposed buildings and structures, all setbacks, all existing physical features of the site within 200 feet. Again, no external changes to the facility. The topography, the location and design of the stormwater systems, no changes. Landscaping and buffering plan, no changes. Lighting details, location, dimension, and details of the sign, no changes. The findings of fact. The applicant demonstrated a legal interest in the property by submitting a warranty deed, which was recorded in the Registry of Deeds on 6 March 2025, book 19615, page 921. And pursuant to the requirements of section 240-10.10A of the Land Use Ordinance, the Planning Board shall approve an application for site plan review unless it makes one or more of the following written findings with respect to the proposed development. And all of the enumerated 16, no to all, no problem. Those are all favorable. It's also located in the shoreline and resource protection zone, so there's 8 more conditions that it needs to be evaluated against, and all of those were found yes. Section 247.12 for retail sales, unless otherwise provided for in this chapter, any use involving the retail sale of goods or services, whether as a retail business or other category of use within the dock square and riverfront zones, shall comply with this section. Each individual retail business shall contain no less than 500 square feet of gross floor area. That's met. The creation of separate areas under this section and within existing structures or as part of proposed structures is subject to site plan review, which of course is what we've just gone through. So yes to both of those. Conclusions and decisions, sections 240-10.10A and 240-10.10B of the Land Use Ordinance mandate that the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that would otherwise compel denial, and as noted above, the Board makes no such findings. The site plan application identified above is hereby approved. Conditions. The applicant shall notify the Planning Board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. No assignment or transfer to construct an approved project is valid without prior review and approval by the Planning Board. The applicants must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the form of a copy, therefore attested by the Register of Deeds before any permits may issue or before any construction activity may commence. 3, the applicant shall comply with all terms and conditions of the Town of Kennebunkport ordinances. 4, seating is not permitted on the site without first obtaining approval from the planning board.
And if you could all initial that condition as you're doing your
Okay.
signatures, that would be great.
So we're going to sign and date this. And I would move to approve these findings.
Second that?
Aye.
All in favor, 3-0. Yes. With that, do we have any other business from the board? With no other business, I would move to bring this meeting to a close.
Second.
All in
Approved.
favor?
All right.
Am I looking-
Wait, did you,